Wetland is not a nice environment to work or to live, but it is a very important ecosystem. Among these ecosystems are peatland and mangrove. So I'm going to talk about peatland today. So peatland, especially tropical peatland, is an ecosystem characterized by accumulation of organic material in the soil, and it has been there for thousands of years and accumulating and submerged in the soil so that the decomposition takes place very slowly. So the organic material is not fully decomposed. Tropical peat swamp forest is very important because they store so much carbon, especially in the soil, or we call it below ground carbon. They can be 5-7 times larger than the above ground carbon. So when this organic material, accumulation of organic material are disturbed, especially when the trees or the forests are cut and the water is drained, then decomposition starts. And this organic material will be oxidized and emitting greenhouse gases. So peatland degradation usually is characterized by a removal of trees or forests or draining of water. So when they are cut, no vegetation on it, and the water is drained, the peat start decompose very quickly, and they are degrading so badly. So peatland restoration will have to take place by putting the water back, what we call rewetting peatland, and then gradually the vegetation is introduced so that it will get original or close to the original cover of vegetation. Out of 20 million hectares of peatland, half of it is already been licensed for concession to be converted into pulpwood plantation or oil palm plantation. So the issue is how to preserve the existing one, which is still not licensed, but also the opportunity to manage properly for those areas which are already licensed. The main factor which are affecting the emission of greenhouse gases in peatland is the excessive drainage of the peat itself, because when it gets dry, the organic material will be oxidized, and that's the time when you start to emit carbon dioxide from organic material. That can be managed in terms of water table management. So even if the peatland is converted, if the water table is managed properly, we have a good chance to reduce the emission. So forested peatland containing something like 200 ton of carbon above the ground. So removal of above ground biomass does not mean only removing 1/5 of it, but you also remove the source of organic material, and then it tends to be drained, and you will lose more because of the drainage. And it's even worse if you employ or use fire to clear the land. So the emission will be faster and bigger. The scientific community is eager to provide information about emission factor from peatland, both drained peatland as well as rewetted peatland. So if you have an option to rewet or manage water table, you need to know the emission factor. CIFOR and ICRAF has been very interested in understanding the process of both peatland degradation and how to restore it. We are interested in looking at how much carbon has been lost by understanding the emission rate, or what we call emission factor of tropical peatland conversion, and also when it is restored by rewetting and putting the vegetation back, how much carbon are accumulated and how much emission are reduced. So in order to do that, we've been working in the field with students, with partners in the region, and I will take you there. We are here in Bengkalis Regency in Riau. What we are doing here is look at the effect or impacts of rewetting peatland or degraded peatland in various landscapes. Ground penetrating radar or GPR is a relatively new equipment in this field because it used to be used to measure peat depth in temperate peatland. But we adopt this technique to estimate the peat depth. So while we calibrate it with the direct depth measurement, we use ground penetrating radar. And this can be done relatively quickly so that we can cover large ground in a relatively short period. The largest carbon pool is soil. So we have to measure it very carefully because there are so much carbon in it, and we have to use special device to collect sample. This is the auger we usually use in the field, specially designed for peat. So we can insert it in the soil, and then at the depth we want to have, this device will be able to collect the sample. And when we take this out, we will be able to see the soil collected. Another component to measure is tree growth. We measure the increase of diameter by putting this simple equipment by which we can see from time to time the increase of tree circle, and we convert it into tree diameter. Litter is a very important component in the ecosystem. We collect them systematically so that we can quantify the amount of litter as the main input of organic material to the soil. Peatland is very dynamic in terms of the height of the surface. It can expand because of the rewetting, and it can shrink because of the drying or drainage of the peat. So in order to measure the dynamic of the change, we put what we call rod surface elevation table, or RSET. To raise the water table, you have to block the drainage canal with this kind of structure. The materials can be found locally, but we have to make sure that they last for a long time. The fluctuation of water table will have to be monitored with this kind of device, commonly called divers. This device is usually installed in a deep well so that it will monitor the fluctuation of water table continuously. With all these measurements, we will have carbon stock in 4 pools: above ground, below ground, litter or dead organic material, and soil carbon. So with these carbon stock numbers, we will be able to measure or calculate emission factors by differentiating between a measurement in T1 and the previous measurement or the future measurement. Another approach of estimating emission factor is by measuring direct flux of the gas. This device is installed on the ground, and it is differentiated between ground with trench and ground without trench. The difference is that you will be able to measure heterotrophic respiration when it is trench and total respiration when it is not trench. Continuous measurement of carbon flux can also be measured with this device so that you can monitor the fluctuation of gases. Here you can see the fluxes of carbon dioxide, and the bottom graph is the methane emission. CIFOR and ICRAF is also very keen to build the capacity, especially to young people, graduate, so that by helping and working with us in the field, they are exposed to this technique and methods so that they understand how to measure the carbon stock in the field directly. Capacity building is a very important component that CIFOR and ICRAF is very keen to promote so that the local community, local university, and also government official will be able to do the same thing elsewhere.